Welcome back to Not So Grand Garage. Today we're out in the fuel shed, and with the way the world is going these days, I figured now would be a good time to touch base on how we do alternative fuels. So yeah, let's jump right into it. Now the fuel we make here, most people call black diesel. It is a blend of petroleum-based waste oils such as motor oil, transmission fluid, hydraulic oil, transformer oil, things like that. Anything petroleum-based, and it's blended down with gasoline to thin it out. This is our new setup here. We've got a WMO Designs raw power single pass centrifuge. We've got their heater unit. We've also got the booster cone set up inside this. Have a 55-gallon drum up here, which set this up just so I can see how full the drum is. It comes down, gravity feeds through a filter. Got a standard ball valve here and a gate valve here. This gate valve lets me adjust the flow down into the centrifuge. And this valve here just lets me shut off the flow completely, and then I won't have to tamper with my flow adjustments. As we process, this valve opens up, gravity feeds down through this filter, down through this gate valve, down into the base of the heater element. We usually run this heater around 130 to 150 degrees. It comes up, comes in and into the top of the centrifuge, which this has not been cleaned out since the last batch. But so it comes in right to the center, and if I can get you in here, down into this little cone-shaped piece in the bowl, which forces the oil down to the bottom of the bowl. So it spends more time in the bowl as it's forced all the way down to the bottom. The oil has to work its way back up and out of the bowl before it trickles down into our finished drum. The first batch we ran in this centrifuge, we took out literal cups of sludge, which you can still see some down in this bowl. It has not been cleaned out very well, but since the last batch I ran, usually I just flush it out with a little brake cleaner. But yeah, you can see that. That is straight water and sludge that is pulled out of our base stock. And yeah, I've never, with any of our other filtration methods, our pressure-driven centrifuge, I could never get that kind of quantity of sludge and trash out of the oil like we can with this thing. So if you're going to get into this, if you're going to do it for the long run, pony up front and go with a single pass unit. Yes, it's expensive. Yes, it's a big investment. But if you start with filters, and then you move up to a pressure drive unit, then you move up to a single pass unit like we did, you end up spending a lot more money. So if you're just going to tinker around with it, that's one thing. If you're going to take it seriously, invest in this up front and be done with it. And this will help you out a lot as far as making things easy. And it does an amazing job. I'm not getting any kind of, this isn't a paid promotion or anything like that. Just really like this unit. There's several other companies that make them. They all work really well from my understanding. And yeah, so do your research and go from there. On our finished drum, we've got a stainless transfer pump. And yeah, flip switch on this. And we come out here to a filter head and just a standard nozzle. Also got some bulk storage out here, which we need to cover up. But yeah, pretty simple little setup. Got bulk tanks in here as well, which these tanks typically sit anywhere from 6 months to a year plus. They're sitting here settling. We always pull from the top of the tanks with our pump setup, which I'll show you now. Now, as you saw earlier, we've got a 55-gallon drum up there that gravity feeds down to our centrifuge. Now, I use a modified big block Chevy oil pump that we cut holes in and welded in inch pipe nipples on both sides. And we run 1-inch braided hose on both sides. This here is the suction hose. And yep, we power this by a simple 1/2-inch drill. And this lets us pull off the top of the tank instead of the bottom. And we'll run this here, like I said, with a hand drill. And just watch up here as this fills up to the top. Now, we've been doing alternative fuels off and on for close to 10 years now. How I first started, when I first started getting into it, we did some basic filters, some gravity setups. Basically, I had this drum here set up high. I gravity filtered through a couple 10-micron filters, like whole house water filters, stuff like that, into a drum. It worked. It got me by, and it got me into doing this. I ran that setup for probably a year. It was problematic at times because obviously the oil's not getting very clean, and we ran into some issues with that, coking injectors and stuff like that over time. So as we progressed, as we stayed involved in it, we upgraded to a pressure-driven centrifuge, 55-gallon-per-hour unit from PA Biodiesel. We ran that unit for better part of 7 years, and it worked really well. We had it set up on another 55-gallon drum like this, and I ran that it's a 55-gallon-per-hour unit. We looped that unit on that drum for 40 hours per batch. We would batch 55 gallons at a time, and it worked really well. And after doing this for 8 years off and on, with that set up and with the filters and everything else, we decided to go on and make the investment to get the single pass centrifuge. It was a costly investment, but as I've discovered, it was a big improvement over everything we've done so far. Up until now, I've never been able to run our blends in cold months. It just would coke up injectors. We'd get a lot of hazing issues, stuff like that over time. Now, so far with this setup, I've been able to run the same mixture down to single-digit temperatures without any issues. We don't have any coking issues like we used to, and overall it runs really well, so I'm really happy with it. But yeah, it takes a lot of time. It takes a good bit of an investment to get going into this stuff. Also, like picking up oil, we run a 1.5-inch Harbor Freight trash pump, and we usually carry an IBC tote on the back of the truck. We've got 2-inch discharge and supply hoses for that pump, so we can pump out of big tanks, drums, anywhere else that we'll pick up from local farmers and small shops, things like that. Save them money, and it helps us out. And we typically store anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 gallons at a time, and it will settle for, like I said, 6 months to a year before we ever touch it. And that, I think, helps with a lot of issues. We don't end up with a lot of water and things like that. That all settles out to the bottom. We can drain it off and dispose of it properly. And it gives us the cleanest stuff to work with pretty well. Now, our typical batch consists of approximately 50 gallons of waste oil to 5 gallons of what people tend to call RUG, or regular unleaded gasoline. We get gasoline sometimes given to us. That right there is a drum of gasoline diesel mix. Local shop called and asked if we wanted it. They had a driver come in with a semi, and they had filled the tanks up with gasoline by accident. They had to pump it out, and they had no way to get rid of it. So that helps us out and helps them out. Stale gasoline works just fine too. All we're doing with gas is thinning the oil down. We're not looking for added flammability or making it combust easier. We're just wanting it thinner. The goal is to get this oil stock down. By the time we're all said and done and in this tank, we want it as close to diesel fuel viscosity as we can get it. So typically, we'll pump from this any one of these 3 tanks in here. We'll pump up into this drum. When this drum gets full or fills this up, that will be approximately 50-ish gallons. So we'll run it down, run it through the centrifuge. We don't add gasoline to it yet because this has got a heater on it. Used to, when we would run a pressure-driven centrifuge or the gravity filtration setup, we would mix gasoline in with it first, which would help it flow through the filters, help it flow through the centrifuge easier. But I don't like the idea of mixing gasoline and heat. So, not necessarily a safety issue, but it could evaporate the fuel off, which we don't want. We want it in the oil as much as possible. So, anyways, so we run 50 gallons of waste oil in this tank. As we process it down, this will end up 50 gallons down here. And then we mix approximately 5 gallons of gasoline to this. And I've got this pump set up where it will circulate this drum and mix the drum up. And then it's good to go, ready to go in the tank. And yeah, we don't have any issues with it. A lot of people run into trouble on these setups. The biggest issue I've seen is running short trips on alternative fuels, running it on a cold engine. It will quickly coke up injectors, it will quickly coke up rings, and you'll be in for a headache. So I always suggest to new people getting into it a 2-tank setup. Yeah, it's an added expense, but the investment there will save you a lot of headache and a lot of trouble down the road. We run 2 tanks in everything that we run on this stuff, and we will start and shut down on diesel fuel. It makes starting much easier, and it keeps the injectors cleaner. Oil takes a lot of heat to burn, and also it burns slower than diesel fuel does. So bumping injection timing up a little bit helps. But yeah, when you run 2 tanks and you only run on this alternative fuel when the engine's warm, it really eliminates a lot of problems. This centrifuge here has also eliminated a lot of problems. It pulls out a lot more water, a lot more sludge than any of the other units we've had in the past, and it really works well. So basically, to the nitty-gritty of it, it cost us approximately 30 cents a gallon on the high side to produce our fuel. And all of our mechanical diesels will run on it just fine. We've had no issues out of it. I hear a lot of people complaining and freaking out. Oh, it's gonna kill injectors. It's gonna kill your engine. Blah blah blah. Well, no, it won't. Not if you do it right. Not if you get the oil clean, you get it thin, you run on it when the engine is at operating temperature. You won't have any problems. Some people run water meth injection on their engines as well, just to help keep the combustion chambers and stuff clean. It works, it helps. I can tell you I ran into a few problems when I first got into this. Like I said, I was coking injectors and stuff like that. I ran it in a 4-cylinder Cummins for a while, and I was doing short trips back and forth to work. The engine wasn't getting up to operating temperature, so every week and a half or so, I'd start losing power and stuff like that. It'd start hazing. And I discovered that I was coking the tips of the injectors up. I could pull the injector and there'd be carbon chunks hanging off the tip of it. So that's when I decided to stop running short trips on it. And ever since then, I've done 2 tank systems and no short trips. Haven't had any problems since. And we've probably ran through thousands of gallons and over the last 10 years. And like I said, no mechanical failures. The occasional filter will plug up, but after the first couple tanks of it, if you're running a factory tank with your alternative fuel in it, this stuff will clean out the fuel system really well. So any of the sludge and everything else that's in the fuel tank that you don't know about, you're going to discover when it starts plugging fuel filters. So it will probably plug 4 or 5 fuel filters right off the bat. And that's not from the oil, it's from the sludge that's already in the tank that the oil is breaking down. Because the detergents that are still in the oil clean the fuel system out really well. And there's also a lot of people that talk about waste petroleums running them being bad for the environment and so on and so forth. Well, oddly enough, one of the EPA approved ways of disposing of waste petroleum oils is to burn it. And that sounds kind of crazy, but it's common to be used in shop heaters and stuff like that. And especially when it's being ran in a high compression, high heat environment, it burns a lot cleaner than just dumping it on a fire or keeps it out of the ground. People take their waste oil out and just dump it in the ground or kill weeds with it and everything else. Yeah, we won't get into that, but doing it this way, it's cleaner. We don't get any extra smoke or haze or anything like that. This big centrifuge takes most, if not all, of the bad stuff out of it. So, yeah, nothing really to worry about there. Now let's discuss the legalities of all this. It's a gray area, not gonna lie. There's many states that allow it. There's many states that just if you want to do it, you're driving in with it on the road, you need to be paying road tax on it. And there's usually some state forms you can fill out, and you keep track of how much fuel you use, you pay your road tax on it, and you're legal. You would need to check with your state and figure out what you need to do to stay legal if you want to abide by the law or not. That's your business, not mine. So you do you on that. I'm not an attorney, and this isn't legal advice, so you do you. But anyways, alternative fuels can be a lot of fun. It's a hobby for me, and I really enjoy it. I enjoy tinkering around with it. I really am fascinated with old mechanical diesels, and that's what we run it on. Tractors, buses, trucks, it don't matter. The stuff runs like pump diesel, if not better. And yeah, we have a good time with it. Also saves a lot of money, especially with the going price of diesel fuel right now, over $5 a gallon. 30 cents versus $5. You do the math. I think we're coming out ahead. So with that said, I would not suggest alternative fuels for anything that is newer than probably 2003, 2004. I know a lot of people run it in the 7.3 Power Strokes, 5.9 Cummins, things like that. Anything that is getting into the emissions era, I would avoid like the plague. Anything that you're afraid to spend money on if something goes wrong, I would not do it. In our old mechanical engines, I can replace an entire injection system for $1,500, injection pump included, all the injectors, everything. In these newer engines, you might drop $1,000 on an injector, and that's that's going to add up quick. So I would avoid any emissions regulated engines for this stuff. Some of them just won't run on it at all. Some of them have opacity sensors in the fuel system, and they'll shut down. They won't run on it. So your old mechanical diesels, like the the 7.3 and 6.9 IDI Fords, OM 617 Mercedes, your DT 466 360s, 5.9 Cummins, 3.9 Cummins. Anything that is mechanically injected will typically run on this stuff just fine. And yeah, there's also other ways to do it. I mean, there's a lot of people that run vegetable oils and stuff like that. I've never got into it. I've heard it's a lot of a headache, which I ran into some issues on my Mercedes with that. Previous owner had ran a lot of veggie oil through it, and he had some problems and parked the car. 10 years later, after I drug it out of his field, I mean, the whole fuel system was plugged solid with solidified vegetable oil. The injection pump was shot, had to trash it. The injectors were shot, fuel lines, everything was just plugged solid. Veggie oil is not my thing. I know a lot of people run it and have great luck with it. I mean, if that's the route you want to take, do your research, do it right. You won't have any trouble either. But anyway, if you have any questions, post up in the comment section. I'll do my best to get back with you. And if any questions come up that need a little bit more explanation or something like that, I'll post up another video. I'll throw it together for you. That's no problem. As we get more into the alternative fuel side, is showing off the system and everything, I'll do more as far as showing how the trucks and stuff run on it, how we move it, how we go pick it up, so on and so forth. I think that's gonna pretty well wrap it up and cover it for this one. So yeah, I appreciate you all watching. If you haven't already, please subscribe, and have a good one.